I'm Jai-Lynn Rodriguez. This is Jay's All Insight. Today I have here with me the famous cutman, Jacob Stitch Duran, 35 plus years of experience in the game. You also may know him from his appearances in films such as Rocky Balboa, Creed 1, 2, and 3, along with Here Comes the Boom, Ocean's 11. The list goes on. My personal favorite has to be American Me. I'm just
Yeah,
I'm,
sure.
I'm just messing with you. But speaking of Edward James, have you ever met him and have you ever had a conversation with him about the resemblance between the two of you?
Oh, we're friends. We became friends by accident, right? So when I was doing working with the UFC, I knew he was going to be in the audience because him and Anderson Silva were going to make a movie together.
Mhm.
And I'm wrapping hands, and one of the UFC staff comes by and says, "Hey, Edward James Olmos wants to meet you." Well, of course, I wanted to meet him, right? He's a Chicano, right? So real
Right.
quick, let me show you this picture. Look at this. That's just
There's
one.
there's a big
Yeah.
resemblance there.
Yeah, look, that's when I met him at the UFC, and then that's we did an independent movie together. Look at that. So yeah, so
Wow.
we know each other, and he says people call him Stitch all the time. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I've seen in a recent interview, he says that he does take advantage of being mistaken for you to get into fights. How do you feel about that?
so that's cool. And it's funny because I did a show, a boxing show in Corpus Christi, I think a month ago or something like that, and we're right on the boardwalk, and they got Selena's statue there, and everybody thought I was Edward James Olmos. But Chicanos think all over, everywhere I go, they always ask me if I'm Edward James Olmos. So it happens all
Right.
the time.
So, how are you doing today? How's your summer going, 2024? How's it going out for you?
No, real busy. This is last weekend when I worked with Nate Diaz against Jorge Masvidal. That was like my actually this Saturday. It was like my eighth show in a row, 8 weeks in a row. So I got this weekend off, and it's kind of cool. But uh, yeah, so working a lot of other things. Got a documentary coming out, and uh, I'm working with a company called the Cut Cream that has a cream that for the healing process of cuts, and so I'm doing a lot of work outside of the ring. So staying busy, thank God.
I was about to say, every fight I see, you are there and you're
Yeah,
in someone's
yeah,
corner. And I'm like, oh, there's Mr. Stitch.
yeah. And what's great about this, Jai-Lynn, is I've kind of never asked for one job, and things just happen. You're talking about the movies, same thing with the movies. I'm not an actor, I haven't been an actor, but I've been in 7 movies, So things just happen, and you got to take advantage of them. And you're Chicana, I'm a Chicano, and I always tell the young guys is don't be scared. I'm no different than you. I just had these opportunities that have been given to me, and I've done it at the highest level. So if you're gonna do anything, do it at the highest level.
Of course. Speaking of, you said how you started off and you've been in the industry for what is it, almost 40 years now, correct?
Pretty much, yeah. Well, actually, I when I started training in I was stationed in Thailand in 1974. When you put that in, when I started throwing my first kicks, until now, it's been 50 years. You know,
Wow.
so yeah. But I had a school of kickboxing. Then that's been from there on. That's been like 40 years. So I've been doing this for 50 years.
And you started off in the UFC. You're no longer with the UFC. You're now just strictly doing boxing, correct?
Yeah, well, I didn't start off with them. I came to Vegas because I had a school of kickboxing before I
Mhm.
moved to Las Vegas. I've been in Las Vegas 29 years. Came to follow my dreams. So dreams do happen, right? But I knew Dana before the UFC. I came here for boxing, and it was boxing only at that time. And the UFC came, and I knew Dana before the UFC. And I'm working a K1 kickboxing show at the Bellagio, and Dennis is in the audience, and he asked me for my card. And next day he calls, "Hey, look, man, we bought the UFC, and would you be interested in being one of the two house cutmen?" And yeah, it started that way. And then I was with him for 15 years. I was a primary cutman. We're all working with sponsors, and fighters were making bank. I was making bank on sponsors because UFC wasn't paying that much. And they went exclusive with Reebok and took all the sponsors away from everybody. Nobody was happy. And they called me and asked how if I would do an interview on how the Reebok deal affected the cutmen. And being that I grew up as a farm worker in the Central Valley of California, and my parents were there with during the era of Cesar Chavez, uh, I did the interview, and kind of supported the fighters and all that. But it went viral, and from there they fired me, and from there I became the face of the rebellion. So fight for your rights.
Have you ever spoken to Dana White since? Have you ever crossed paths with him?
No, no. But if I did, I'd shake his hand and tell him thank you for letting me go because the best thing ever happened to me. Till now, been 10 years, Jai-Lynn, since I've been gone from the UFC, and people still stop me everywhere and associate me with the UFC because they can't get rid of me. All the fights I did for the reruns, I'm in them, and I mean, Wesley Snipes comes and shakes my hand and says, "Hey, man, UFC did you wrong." Goldberg, the wrestler, "Hey, man, F Dana, man, a lot of respect for you." But the best one I got was from one of the Brazilian trainers, trained Anderson Silva and all the top Brazilians. I hadn't seen him in 8 years, and I saw him during the COVID. We had a show in the bubble at the MGM, and he comes to me and he says, "Stitch, we, the coaches, the fighters, we thank you for speaking up because we couldn't." That's my legacy.
So throughout all that, you made your mark, and now people know you worldwide. We can confirm you do not wear Reebok. Uh,
100%. But you know what? The guy from Reebok called me during that era, that time. My wife and my son were having breakfast, and he calls me and Mike, and he said, "Hey, man, I just want to let you know we had nothing to do with this, and I've met you before. You're a stand-up guy, and all that." So he covered himself, right? But yeah, you're right. I don't wear Reebok.
you're on the road all the time. How is it balancing your personal life and then being on the road? You have your family with you. Do they come with you or
No, my wife Jan's just been doing this too long. She went with me. We spent a week in Newport Beach when Nate Diaz fought, and so she was with me for that whole week. And then her birthday was Sunday, and from there we went to the Hollywood Bowl to watch Patti LaBelle. But nah, she don't go. But the days that I'm here, it's all family time. And but sometimes I got to go to the gyms and just kind of check with the guys and make sure you know and just barbershop talk. But no, it's a that's my wife and my kids because they made sacrifices for me to come here. I worked for RJ Reynolds Tobacco Company and I put in for a job transfer. And when I got it, there was a secondary position, and I took like a $25,000 a year cut and pay just to move to Vegas. And I sold my house and gave my school of kickboxing to a student, and my family supported me. So now they're reaping the benefits of my job. So
wow,
that's
that's
nice.
awesome. And that's honestly a blessing because, it's a risk,
Yeah,
it's a big
100%.
risk that you're like, you know what? I'm gonna take it. And it's awesome to see where you are now. I mean, I see you every time I'm in Vegas and there's a fight, you're there. And people are always stopping and asking to take photos with you. So
Yeah.
you've made your mark, and your hard work does not go unnoticed.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's greatly appreciated too. And there was and you're right, I always stop and take pictures, and there's certain things in your life, right, that give you a direction of what's right and what's wrong. And but Randall Cunningham used to be a quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles, and this is 30 years ago before I moved to Las Vegas. We did a kickboxing show here. And that was still Jacob, right? That was nobody. And after the fights, we're talking to Randall Cunningham, me and my three brothers, and this one guy comes up and, "Hey, Randall, come here, man. Let me introduce you to this one guy." He says, "Hold on. Let me finish talking to these guys." I never felt so important in my life. He's a pastor here in Las Vegas, and I've done this story hundreds of times. I've that's from that time I've never met him, but when I do, I'm just going to let him know that you just reinforce that those little things that you give a fan go a long, long ways. And so because when I was learning to be a cut man, this one guy told me to f off, and because I asked him, "I'm trying to learn to be a cut man. Can you tell me what you did?" "Ah, F you, I'm taking this to my grave, and you got to learn like me." You probably have those issues in your business where you get guys or people that, don't want you to succeed, and they try to, but those are the ones you need to continue stepping on them and going to the top. You need them.
You said that when you were J still Jacob, how did you get the name Stitch? Where did that come from?
Yeah. Well, I had my school of kickboxing, right? So I was working with Dennis Alexio. Dennis Alexio at that time, before MMA guys, was the best athlete I ever saw in my life. But he was a great kickboxer, world champ kickboxer. And his sparring partner, Dave Rooney, they both fought on the same card. And I was a coach before I was a cutman, but I was making that transition and learning how to be a cutman. So when Dave fought, he ended up with a cut. And I remember I used to see these old veteranos would get tape and rip it and put little butterflies. So that's what I did, not knowing anything. He says, "Oh, I don't have to go to the hospital." He says, "You save me stitches, I'm gonna call you Stitch." And that name has stuck. And I tell people, last time I heard about David Rooney is he was a fisherman somewhere up in Alaska. But I don't know if he knows how much he changed my life and say he's the one that gave me that name. So that's how that name came to be. Crazy, huh? All over the world, people all over the world stop me. Everywhere. Shaq, I see Shaq O'Neal at the Canelo fight. "Hey man, Stitch, I see you everywhere." So you don't think that blows my mind? And even the Creed movies, it was in the script, my name was Marcel. And of course, I don't know anybody named Marcel, but when it was time for Rocky, Sylvester Stallone, Rocky, to introduce us to Adonis, he says, "Oh, this is Stitch, the best cut man in Philadelphia."
And Stitch, best cut man in Philadelphia. Hope you don't need him.
And man, I was so happy that the next day I said, "Thanks, man." He says, "No, because it has to be authentic." So that's how I kept my name in the movies. It's crazy, huh?
And it is crazy because growing up, we watched a lot of boxing, if you couldn't tell.
Yeah.
Um, so it was always like, oh, there's Stitch, there's Stitch. And then when we saw the movies, they're like, oh my gosh, there he is.
Yeah.
So it's awesome to see your appearances in those films that appreciate the sport.
No, it's been a blessing. And just warming up.
Yeah, exactly. You've been in the industry for almost 40 years, more than that. But the boxing scene, throughout your career, what would you say would be the most memorable?
Ooh, I got tons of stories. Tons of stories. So many great moments. I at one moment, and I'll you have to give you two or three, is my first trip to Japan for the Pride fights with Josh Barnett. It's at the Tokyo Dome, and I walk in, and you know, people, Stitch-san, Stitch-san. Wow, it's great. But one of my best fights in the UFC was Vanderlei Silva when we fought Chuck Liddell. I was working with Chuck Liddell and Vanderlei. They gave me the name, and the Brazilians gave me the nickname Santana. When Carlos Santana, and
Right.
so they always mess with me. But Vanderlei Silva, I saw him a week before that fight, and I told him it's my birthday that day, which was December the 29th. I want to give you good karma, just positive things. Well, I'm there in the toughest fight I've ever seen in my life. You guys are cracking each other, just cracking it. At the end of the fight, Chuck is cut, I clean him up. Then I go see Vanderlei, and he's all bruised up, and Leon Tabs is working on him. And I say, "Vanderlei, how you doing?" As a friend. "Oh, Stitch, no, I'm good, I'm good." And right after this strong battle, he says, "Stitch, happy birthday." I said, "Wow, man, that was priceless." So yeah, tons of them. Vladimir Klitschko, this is my last one I'll give you because I got too many. Vladimir Klitschko, that I had he was world champion for 8 years. And with me, but I worked with him, he was world champ for 8 years. But on the last one, I didn't see him until Friday at the weigh-ins when he was fighting Anthony Joshua at Wembley Stadium with like 90,000 fans and millions around the world. And I see him in the dressing room, and his brother Vitaly, and we're talking. And finally, I put my hand on Vladimir's shoulder. So look, don't worry about nothing tomorrow. I'll take care of you like you're my son. And I got that from Anderson Silva. And so here I am putting the final Vaseline on him right before Michael Buffer does the announcements. And we're like this far apart. And he says, "You could call me son." And I knew, that I got into his mind. He lost, but one of the greatest fights he ever had.
Was there ever a fight where you're like not unprepared, but you just had to kind of step up and be like, okay, this guy's cut really bad. I just need to step in there, try to do the best I can. Or did you just tell the refs to stop the fight?
Well, I've done both. My job is to take care of the fighter. Number one, first and foremost, my only job, right? And I did that with Vladimir Klitschko. And the first fight I worked with him is he got that one cut with that big vein that we have, and you pop that vein, it's gonna bleed. It's gonna bleed, 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 and I knew he was winning the fight, and because he won the first 3 rounds, and on the fourth round he gets dropped, but I know he's still winning. So when the doctor came and checked on the cut, she said, "Well, what do you think, Stitch?" And I opened it up. I said, "Pretty bad." She went and she stopped and went to the scorecards because it was before 5 rounds, and went to the scorecards and he won. So he became world champion after that for 8 years. So that was one of the moments. But there's moments when I've had the doctor stop the fight. And Andre Durrell, he fought Jose Esqueregi, and he was taking the kind of shots that would go here and come out here, what I consider long-term damage. And I see the doctors are talking, and I ask him when I'm working on him, just him and I said, "Look, doctors are thinking of stopping the fight. You want to continue?" And he goes, "Just a little no." Well, stop the fight. And the coach the coach, no, he's okay, one more round. And I said, "Nope." Once he said no, done. Next day he called me and he said, 8 in the morning, him and his wife. And he said, "Look, man, I want to thank you because I had nothing with me." And it's funny you bring this question up because I saw Andre Durrell, they're from Detroit. I saw him, but when David Benavidez fought,
Okay.
and he comes up to me, "Man, I love you. God, thanks for everything. And because of you, I'm doing good. I got a good job." So that was a good story.
Is there a fighter or a boxer that you wish you would have been in their corner?
No, wow, Roberto Duran, sure, of course, Alexis Arguello, those days, right? And but the first world title fight I worked was Tony the Tiger Lopez from Sacramento, California, and he fought Julio Cesar Chavez in Monterrey, Mexico, and in the baseball stadium. And baseball, I love baseball, so to me that was my first fight. And I saw Julio Cesar Chavez one of the fights a year ago, and he's doing commentating, and I told him that story. Now he comes every time he sees me, gives me a hug, So
That's awesome. I mean,
yeah,
that's what the connections you can make.
well, it's Jai-Lynn, I've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of world title fights and hundreds of fights, and it's not even about that no more. It's about those relationships, these stories I'm telling you about. It's nothing like it, man. You can't go pay for it. Nate Diaz gives me a hug and love you. Nate don't tell nobody he loves him. Just the way he is. So, but yeah, those are those special relationships.
When you're in this industry, those are the relationships you want, a friend and a friend.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people that want connections for other reasons, but you're like, you just want to be genuine, like, hey, I just want to be your friend. I just want to be there for you. And as a cut man, you have to build those relationships and that trust.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I always tell people you brought up a little valid point there. I tell people if you do it for the money, you do it for the wrong reasons. It has to be a passion, for what we do. And these guys feel it. You guys are gladiators. They're modern day gladiators, but deep inside they're all babies. And my job is to take care of the baby.
But I have to ask, did you ever work with Arturo Gatti? He would get cut before he even stepped inside the ring.
No, Arturo got it with that would have been one of my dream fights, right? Because I tell people you punch him here, he gets cut here, And but during that era, I was working with Johnny Tapia. Same thing with Johnny. I was working with Rocky Gannon. Same thing. Hit him here, they cut there. And Raul Marquez. When Raul first time he fought, he had like cuts here, here, and here, and he won his world title. But Miguel Diaz says, "Man," he goes, "You're lucky. You get all the bleeders."
Yeah, I
So
was about to say you worked with Raul Marquez and he would get cut
yeah,
super easy.
yeah, all the time.
Giving me an estimate, how many fights do you think you work on a year?
Dude, I don't know, because working with Top Rank, we came in, me and Mike Baz was house cutmen. So, I have to work 5 fights in one night is pretty common. And when I was doing MMA, bare knuckle fights, they're all common, but God, I couldn't tell you. There's, I don't know, 300, you know. Yeah, yeah. You know, figure out about 40 shows a year. And let's say minimum, yeah, 3 or 4. Yeah. So it's, over 2 to 300.
That is a lot.
Yeah,
That's
it's a lot. Yeah, some guys, hey man, you work my fight. I said, shit, I don't remember, too many guys, too many guys and girls, and but they understand. Like Saturday, I did the top rank fights, and I wrapped this young kid's hands for the first time, and his whole personality, goes up. Oh man, Stitch wrapped my hands, and he ended up winning. So
who
I
was
know.
it? Do you remember or you don't?
I don't remember too many. No, too many names.
I'll have to go back and look. How do you prepare yourself in terms of equipment and strategy when it comes to going into being in a boxer's or a fighter's corner?
Good question. Good question. I do everything systematic. The formula that I have works, but I always prepare for worst case scenario. And like the top rank shows, I know I'll be doing multiple fights. Even if I'm doing one fight, I always bring enough gauze and tape and medications and all that for gloves, everything for 5 fights. So uh, that's how I prepare. And then come fight time, you know, I get everything locked and loaded, and got my gloves on and put the wrist wrap with the swabs and make sure at least one of them's moist in case there's a cut. And just, you got your ice and your ice pack, and I always sit down with the fighters before they go out because I do so many new guys like Saturday, and I'll sit down with the team and I said, look, just give me the right side, give me his face, and you guys do everything else. But then I'll tell the fighters, look, I'm gonna keep ice on you kind of like every round. If you're in a hard toe-to-toe fight, I'm gonna minimize your inflammation. And that's what I did when they did, and they didn't get cut. So those are all proper presentations, and doing them the right way.
With that being said, we all have our bad days at work. We forget paperwork, we forget something, whether it's our phone, documents. Has there ever been a time where you've forgotten swabs, Vaseline, any equipment?
Oh, I have Vaseline and gloves. I'm not gonna lie, but working with Top Rank with Mike Basil, he's like me. He always brings enough for the worst case scenario. So, yeah, but for the medications and the important things, nah, I got those suckers locked in. But I'll pull everything out of my bag, gauze and tape and everything, and I'll make sure everything is counted appropriately for the events and all that. And everything, boom, boom, and I iron out my outfits. I always tell people you got to iron your clothes. You got to go in there looking sharp.
Exactly. What kind of training or qualifications does it take to become a great cut man?
Well, it's time, I guess, for being a great cut man, but for being a cut man, we talked about it at the fight Saturday. Is I get a young lady from Orlando, one of her son was fighting, and she comes up to me and she wants to know if I do seminars, courses, because she wants to be a cut woman, right? But I get requests like this all the time through messages, but I'll tell them, I said, look, here's what you got to do: is you got to spend hours and days and weeks and months and years in the gym. You got to spend time with these guys, be one of them, understand them psychologically, physically. You start wrapping their hands for free. You get your experience, you get their confidence up, and then they bring you in and you start from there. But you just don't walk in because you're a nurse or you're a doctor to go work a title. So it's not that easy. But in adding to that, I'm so busy. I've done interviews in Mexico City, Oaxaca, in Athens, Greece, and in Germany and all that. But I'm in Canada. But I'm so busy I can't do them all the time. It's like 120 people showing. But I just put a video out last week. It's called "Giving the Fighter One More Round," and it shows you everything that I do in the seminar: wrapping hands for boxing, for MMA, using the N12, the metal, the medications, Everything you need to know to take care of a fighter is that's at the video. So you can let your listeners go to stitchduran.com. And it's only $50. Not even about making the money, it's about teaching. My legacy is to teach, I'm not gonna make my money off of this. That's why I made it. And even if you just want to learn how to wrap hands, you could rent it for $10. That's cheap, that's nothing, and what I would charge for seminars, it's a piece of cake, but it's not about making money, it's about educating these people to take care of these fighters.
I completely agree with you, and I can say that you've definitely made your mark. I've definitely seen people use some of your equipment. So it's cool that you have your own program. So other cutmen or other people that want to learn how to wrap hands that are just getting into the sport, that you're giving them that accessibility to be able to learn.
Yeah, I don't want to be like that guy that told me to F off. That was the old school mentality of boxing at that time. Is they thought it was a secret. You would take their job, and to me, I thought it was stupid. And there's still people like that. You'll see guys in the fights with no gloves, putting the swabs in their mouth or putting them in their ear, and you'll see them. And I tell young fighters, if you're looking for a cut man and he does that, puts a swab here, puts a swab there, get another cut man. It's filthy. That's old school. He's learning off of other people's mistakes. They don't wear gloves. That's another thing. And even ask them the medications, the adrenaline chloride 1000, the medication we use on the swab, right? I'll ask them, ask the guys, what does the medication do? What's the mechanical factors to that? It's, it stops the bleeding. Yeah, it does, but how? Oh, it coagulates it. Well, if they tell you it coagulates it, get another cut man, because that's wrong. It's a vasoconstrictor. And see, that's what I'm saying, because in this game, none of us have to be certified. Coaches, trainers, to be called professionals. And it's like a lot of the blind is leading the blind. And I'm trying to fix that. And it's not fair to the fighters. I see it all the time. Major, major mistakes.
I've heard you say this in a prior interview. It's good to have a cut man and it's good to have a coach. We see a lot of the time that there are fighters who have their coach as a cut man. Prime example, when you came into Benavidez's team, you were their cut man, and Jose Benavidez Sr. got to be the coach.
Yes. And he told me, it's funny. Can I tell you the whole story, how all this happened? All right, it's kind of great because we kind of laughed and we kind of used that during our press as people interviewed us because, Stitch is working with the Benavidez, that was pretty big stuff, right? But this happened about 10 years ago when I first met Jose, the father. We were in London and we're on the way to the weigh-ins at the O2 Arena. We're in the bus and he's sitting next to me and he's telling me about his two sons, David and Jose, that they're both going to be world champions. You hear that all the time, right? Well, they were both world champions. So I saw them when I was in Dallas when Ugas fought, what's his name? And I saw him there. I said, look, man, I want you guys to know your father told me 10 years ago, you guys are going to be champions. And sure enough. So anyway, going fast forward, now I work with Caleb Plant when he's fighting David Benavidez, right? And my job was to go in the dressing room to watch the father wrap the hands and make sure they're within the guidelines, which is all bullshit because it's what the commission's there for. But it's psychological, right? So I walk in and the father, number one, I did the movie Creed 3 with Jose for 6 weeks. So we became real good friends, right? I'll tell you the story. So I walk in and the father starts getting nervous a little bit. Because he knows my specialty is wrapping hands and the techniques that he uses are techniques that I have. So he's there and then finally he's kind of getting tape and he's rolling it between the fingers, which is fine. But I say, hey man, why are you doing that? And boy, he got nervous. Hey man, F you, he tells me, But I knew I got into his mind, right? And David just like this, like, So he leaves and I didn't know till the day of the fight. Jose tells me, the young Jose, he goes, as soon as you left, man, my father says, is that the kind of guys you hang out with? So anyway, but being that aside, we're competitors, right? Mm-hmm. And but he knew the fact that David got cut at like 2 weeks, 3 weeks before the fight. So the father had smart enough sense to say, you know what, I was doing both. He told me for all the years I worked the cuts and coached for both my kids. But now that I know the game, it's important for me to be a coach and have a cutman. And that's how we ended up working together. You know, our friendship continues, man. So crazy story, huh?
That is
Especially then with the
crazy.
Chicanos, you know, F you, man. And then he gave me a hug at the end of the fight and apologized, you know. But I did what I had to do, you know. And so,
That's a really cool story. Thank you for sharing that.
yeah,
I've Me personally, they are one of my favorite families in the sport of boxing. I love the way they present themselves.
yeah.
They're very genuine people. You talk to them and they love to have conversation. Um, but with that being said, what advice you would give to someone that aspires to be a cut man in boxing?
Yeah, go to the gyms, you know, go put your time in, just like I said, and be one of them. Just, you know, you have to, well, number one, to wrap hands, you practice on yourself. I always tell guys practice on yourself. That way you know if it's too tight or too loose, and you can always adjust it. But in the gym, you got to go in there and you got to put your own time in. And basically, I tell people every time you wrap somebody's hands, it's like a business card. So you got to do that to a guy. Say, man, you know, I want Jai-Lynn to wrap my hands. She's doing a great job, you know. And that's how the cycle starts. But you just can't walk into it. You can't. It's two different worlds, and you got to know, like I said, the mental game and the physical game, you know, and you have to know all that.
So you said it takes a lot of practice just walking in. Um, what's the most rewarding thing about being a cut man in the sport of boxing? You've seen so many fights, so many people working their hardest in the ring, and you're there in their corner. What to you is the most rewarding part about it?
The kiss in the cheek and the "I love you," you know, I get it all the time from these guys. And the gladiators, you know, Michael B. Jordan, same thing. Gives me a hug, kiss, man, I love you, man. You know, and those are the rewarding things. That's it. Not about the money. It's not about, you know, the fame. It's not about TV. It's about those moments. You know, I mean, I did an interview yesterday. Caleb Plant. We walk into the dressing room and we put our stuff away and we're just kind of waiting and all that. And you know, he's a little nervous. He's walking around and he comes up to me and gives me a hug and gives me a kiss and says, "I love you." You know, but that's releasing stress from him. I understand. You know, and it's building his confidence with me. You know, so those are the mental games that you just can't go to school for that. You gotta be in the trenches to understand their heart and soul.
I'm not going to take up too much more of your time. I'm going to ask you one more question.
No, that's fine.
When's the next time we can see you working in the corner, in someone else's corner? When's the next time we could see you by the
You know,
ring?
the next confirmed one is August 17th. Caleb Plant. He's fighting, but there's a show on the 3rd that there's a good possibility I'll be working with August 3rd. And then yeah, but I'm in no hurry right now. After 8 weeks on the road and eating restaurant food and staying in hotels and all that, it's nice to be home for a little bit.
Enjoying the home cooked meals, right?
Yeah, please, thank you. Yeah.
Well, I just want to thank you again for, giving me time to talk with you. It's been an honor. I'm fangirling. I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to have an interview and speak to Mr. Duran. But what I'm hoping from this is that people can realize that in the sport, there's so much more than boxing and there's so much more behind it in the industry. And Cutman, that's the guy that, he's there in the corner helping. You're one of the biggest helpers when it comes to these fights, to these events.
Yeah, I say I'm like an insurance policy. You know, if you're gonna drive a Ferrari, you're not gonna get insurance for a motorcycle. And so yeah, I'm an insurance policy, and these guys understand that. They know that that's my job function is my only job function is to take care of the fight. And Ali, Ali, the journalist, I saw him Saturday at the fights, and he said, "Hey man, Nate Diaz didn't get cut." I said, "No, he didn't, because my job is to take care of him, and keep that ice on him, minimize those opportunities." But thanks for having me on. It's a great job, and wish you all the best. And let's do it again. I got tons of stories, so
Of course.
Anything I can do to help you grow, please let me know. You know, just continue to do what you do, and yeah, we'll do it again.
Of course. Yes, sir. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful little vacation with you and your family.
Yes.
Stay safe.
All right, thank you. Bye bye.
Bye. Have a